It was exactly a year ago today that I got into vinyl playback for the first time in my life. And over this last year, I have learnt a lot, which is great, but I know there's still a ways to go. But one thing that becomes very obvious very quickly is that serious vinyl playback is expensive. I mean, just buying the records alone is expensive enough. And that's before we even think about all the gear that we want. Notice how I didn't say need. And I think if you're just starting out with vinyl playback, it definitely makes sense to buy products that are great value for money. But what does that phrase really mean? I have been looking at two completely different turntable or vinyl playback upgrades, and both of them have made a significant improvement or been unequivocal for my listening to records enjoyment. One of the upgrades cost £100, the equivalent of maybe one night out in 2023, and the other upgrade costs £1,500. So that one you might need to live on noodles for a month to be able to afford. But which of these two upgrades would you think is the best value for money? And I think you'd automatically assume that the more affordable, the cheaper, the £100 upgrade, it's got to be the best value for money because of the price delta, because it's so much more affordable. But is it really that simple? And that's something that I want to look at and address in this video. It was April 2022 when I created my first vinyl journey video. And in the video, I described all of the kit that I'll be starting with so that there was an on-camera record, excuse the pun, of pretty much everything from day one, with the intention of there being a video record of my whole journey from day one onwards. And that first video has been extremely popular. It's had, over 100,000 views, which is great because it shows the level of interest. And one of the things I did in that video was to ask for the viewers' help. And as you can imagine, there was a hell of a lot of comments, some very interesting comments, but there was lots of positivity and lots of very useful suggestions. And over the last year, I've slowly started to incorporate some of the key suggestions that were made. But definitely one of the most common suggestion was change your cartridge. The cartridge is the most important thing for a turntable. And somebody explained this wonderfully. They said the cartridge with a turntable is like the microphone for your record. And I just thought that was a fantastic explanation. I love that one. I'm going to keep that one. But back in October last year, I finally made the change from the included Avid CA1 cartridge to a Goldring E3. The Goldring E3 is about £100, depending on where you buy it from, Moving Magnet Cartridge that I'm sure most of you are already very familiar with because it's had a super amount of attention and praise. What I liked about the Goldring E3 was that Goldring are a UK-based manufacturer with an over 100-year-long history, which is quite incredible when you think about it. I like the fact that the E3 seemed to fit, physically, size-wise fit, the tone arm that's installed on the Ingenium turntable, and also the fact that it seemed to fit that tone arm from a resonance and compliance point of view. And, researching tone arm and cartridge compliance and resonance initially seems like an ultra complicated topic, but I watched an excellent YouTube video explaining this with how you can work all this out, and I'll link that video down below in the video description box. And the other big thing that attracted me to the Goldring E3 was the price against how difficult it looked to install, because I have never installed a cartridge before and I didn't want to pop my cherry on something too expensive because I was likely to do it wrong, and I'm extremely heavy-handed and clumsy, and of course, practice makes perfect with everything that we do. But what is great about the E3 is that it is relatively easy to install because you just screw into the top of it. There are no tiny bolts to have to contend with. And I knew that I would need an alignment protractor, so I bought an Autofon one from Amazon, and it was about £15, and it's just a bit of cardboard really, but it seems to do the job. So within less than an hour, I was able to change the cartridge and align it and set it up seemingly good enough for this stage anyway. And what would I say was the sonic differences from the CA1 to the Goldring E3? Well, they wasn't massive initially, I'll be honest about that, but after maybe a month or so of listening to the E3, I definitely noticed that it was giving me a more relaxing, a more smooth, a little bit more easygoing vinyl listening experience, which I found was just much more enjoyable. There was definitely a bit more vinyl character there, more relaxed. I think the soundstage had improved some, and there was a bit more fullness and solidity, but it wasn't necessarily a massive improvement. But you know what, for £100, a smoother, more enjoyable, better soundstage, that would be enough of a win for me for, £100 spent. But that is only really just the beginning of the story, because February this year, I got my hands on this second turntable upgrade, which is actually the power supply upgrade for the Ingenium turntable. Now, the power supply upgrade costs £1,500, and that is the exact same price as the whole turntable itself. So initially, it seems like a very excessive upgrade, and it also seems like it would be impossible to offer great value for money. But we need to look much deeper than that before we make that assumption. Because it's the exact same power supply that comes with Avid's more expensive turntable, the Diva 2 SP, which retails for £4,000. And that retail price is very important, and we will come back to that shortly. But how is it different and an improvement? Well, firstly, the power supply and motor system is now all separated. We have a separate DSP controller for the motor, which comes in its own pretty significant sized chassis. So this all feels much more premium and just nice to interact with, and just better in terms of a usability factor than what comes included with the Ingenium normally, which is a motor connected to the cable, which is connected to a plug. So it's kind of like one single unit, with the on and off switch being like a lamp style rocker. You know what, this is okay, it works just fine, but it definitely doesn't feel anything like as nice and premium as having a separate box that you can place exactly where you want, with a nice a nice rotational on off, and then a nice play rotational play button. That is just much nicer. So a small difference really, but a significant one still. With the second improvement being the ability to change the speed between 33 and 45 with the press of a button. And before, to change the speed of the record, you would have to take off the platter, change the belt from one spindle to the other spindle, put the platter back on, which maybe takes a minute or two. But call me lazy, but probably this is the bit that I liked least about the Ingenium, and it was actually demotivating me from listening to 45 RPM records, because it was like, just be listening to 33 to listen to a 45, I've got to make this adjustment, maybe listen to one side of a record, maybe only 20 minutes, and I've got to change it all back again. So I found that demotivating, and as I say, I like that. That was the bit I liked least about the Ingenium. But with the upgraded power supply, just being able to change the speed at a press of a button, of course. Small difference really, but again, a significant one for usability. The third improvement is related to speed management. Avid choose to have the motor separate from the turntable so that vibration is not passed from one to the other, which does make sense from that point of view. But it does mean that the owner needs to position the motor in order to create a good amount, the correct amount of tension between the motor, the belt, and the drive assembly. And with the Avid included power supply, actually how much tension you apply to the belt will dictate the speed, and that's how you fine tune and control the rotational speed. Bearing in mind you have to change from 33 and 45, but it's still this distance and the tension of the belt that controls the rotation speed. With the upgraded power supply, this process is DSP controlled. So you tension the belts, yes, 2 of them, and we'll come back to that difference in a second. But then using the controller, you can adjust the speed up or down to increase or reduce the speed to better fine tune your 33 1/3 and your 45 RPM more precisely. And this process, of course, feels much more accurate, it feels much more premium, it's much easier to do. And yeah, of course, this is a no-brainer improvement, right? I'm sure we can all agree on that. And then we have to think about the two belts, because the standard power supply for the Ingenium is a single belt drive system, whereas the upgraded power supply is a dual belt drive system. And I asked Avid, what is the difference? What is this, what is this design intended for? And they said the best way to explain it is just experience it. So when you set up the new power supply, initially set it up with just one of the belts and listen. And then add the second belt and listen and see if you can hear a difference. And this is a lovely way to, I think, move on to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, because I feel like, yes, all of these usability improvements, easier to change speed, easier to turn on and off, and all of these usability things are great. They make a really nice difference, but I think alone, it would be difficult to justify £1,500 cost for just them. But when we factor in the night and day sound quality improvement, well, then the value proposition does become very different. And the best way I can describe the sound change or improvement is with the energy and the dynamism of the music. And I think some people might say this is the Pratt, the pace, rhythm and timing, which is probably true to a point, but I'm not sure it's exactly the same thing. What I'm referring to is, when you're listening to a record, the way the music leaves the speakers and just the presentation of the music as a whole. With the dual belt system and the upgraded power supply, it's just more energetic, more lively. It kind of wants to come out of the speakers more and just be more engaging rather than kind of sit back and all sat back all the time. Now there's more life and more energy. And I think that's really, really important, because it's something that we take for granted when we listen to digital music, but I'm not sure vinyl necessarily always does that. But I like this, really like this attribute about the upgraded power supply, because I just find it helps me engage with the music more. It holds my attention more and keeps me there and keeps me listening. And then another upgrade, or another improvement, was with the perceived noise floor of the system. Not the noise floor of the record, that's something totally different, but the noise floor of the system. That is because the soundstage seemed to be improved as well, just from an organisation and a positional point of view. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. I just think each element of a soundstage, whether it's a singer, whether it's a musician playing an instrument, or whether it's just the crowd, when all of those individual things have more energy and dynamism to them, they just stand out more. They just pop off of the background more. They stand out more in the whole soundstage. So it's a more engaging and more impressive listening, with more going on that you sit and listen to. And this was definitely a more obvious and significant sound difference compared to just changing the cartridge on its own. But now I feel I was hearing much more of what the cartridge can offer in terms of its sound quality. It can give you a large, expressive and dynamic sound with character. And by character, I actually mean the character of the individual records that I've been listening to, rather than just the character of listening to vinyl on its own, as an overall thing. And that to me is a big difference, actually, because already I can hear where not every record has a character. With some of the older stuff, some of the stuff from the 80s that I have here that I've picked up cheap on eBay, there's a real character to the way that vinyl sounds, maybe compared to some of the modern stuff that I have here, which doesn't seem to have that same character. And whether that character is just of the day or whether it's of the vinyl, but what I've noticed is it makes that album that I'm familiar with sound just a little bit different to what I'm used to. A little bit, special for it being played back on vinyl. And I think that is got to be what vinyl playback is all about, right? Giving us a certain way of listening to music, a certain way of enjoying albums that we really like. So having a turntable setup that's now able to define and distinguish those differences, as opposed to just being like a general vinyl sound overall, for me, that's a big, big step forward in terms of quality, but a big step forward in terms of, my enjoyment factor. But it is important to just wind things back a little bit. The turntable setup that I'm now referring to is not a budget entry-level system really anymore. It probably wasn't to begin with, but it's definitely not now, because there's a £1,500 turntable, a £1,500 power supply, and a £450 platter upgrade. Then there's a £1,000 phono stage. So this is now, a pretty pricey turntable setup, but it's delivering the goods, right? It's really starting to deliver the sound quality goods. Records now have really nice energy and life about them, as I mentioned. There is a good soundstage, nice timing. The bass is good. There's definitely room for improvement there, but the bass is good. There is no stridency in the highs at all. Vocals have a really nice presence, a really good fullness, and as I mentioned, a really nice character. And I have heard much more expensive vinyl setups that have not sounded as good as the sound that I've been getting in here lately. So for me, that's massively motivational. And yeah, it wants me to keep going. And, it's motivating for me to go further, which is fantastic. But I need to come back to the point of this video, the question of this video. Which of these two upgrades is the best value for money? £100 versus £1,500. The delta, the price delta is huge. But even with that huge delta, it's really not that easy for me to give you a definitive answer. Now, of course, £100 cartridge upgrade is always going to seem like the better upgrade. And the better value for money upgrade, sorry. But when you think about what I said, I wasn't fully able to appreciate the £99 worth of cartridge without the power supply upgrade, which just lifted the whole performance level of the turntable setup up that much. So when you look at both of those situations, it's actually makes it quite difficult, right, to say that, well, the £100 is the best value for money, because you're not even going to hear it all unless this upgrade is in place. But still, probably the £100 upgrade for the smoothness and the easygoing and a bit more richness and just a nicer overall listen from a record point of view, record listening. Yeah, it's difficult to argue that that's not a great value for money upgrade, because it really is. But there's also another side to that might make it not necessarily the best value for money upgrade. And I think value for money is really, for me at least, how much you're going to use something for how long, more so than how much you paid for it. How much you'll use it for how long. And that's the reason why maybe the E3, Goldring E3, is not the best value for money upgrade, because after listening to it, thinking how good it sounds for £99, already I'm looking at the more expensive Goldring cartridges, the Moving Magnet cartridges for the £300 and £400, because like, wow, this is how good £99 sounds. What does £400 sound like? And I think that would happen to a lot of owners, right? A lot of people would buy the E3, really like it, and then automatically the greedy audiophile, right, wants you to look at, wow, what does £300 get us? What does £400 maybe or more get us? So maybe the owner of the E3 might buy it, only have it for, maybe a matter of months. Maybe they'll upgrade on again, right? I'm sure that happens all of the time. It's not unrealistic to assume that would happen. So maybe that's where the power supply upgrade, which is definitely a one and done, maybe lifetime purchase. That power supply upgrade, it makes a huge amount of sense if you're going to have that Ingenium turntable for a long time, maybe for years, maybe for life. And there's no reason why you couldn't. It's an excellent, lovely, lovely turntable to live with. So if you bought that power supply upgrade, and that improved your everyday use, everyday listen, maybe over a period of 10 years. And then even with that high initial cost, it would be easy to look at that and think, wow, yeah, that was a really great value for money upgrade, because I've used it loads and used it for a really long period of time. So maybe the power supply upgrade is the best value for money upgrade here. But I think where it becomes a bit more of a quandary with that is because if you are just starting out with vinyl, and you're looking to buy a turntable now, or maybe looking to upgrade a turntable, the Ingenium, plus the cost of the platter, plus the cost of the power supply, £3,500 give or take. The Diva 2 SP, which is one up in the Avid range, is only £4,000. So it probably makes more sense to stretch a bit further and go up to the Diva 2 SP. But the Diva 2 SP does not come with an arm and cartridge like the Ingenium does. So that'll cost you more, right, to buy an arm and a cartridge. So all of these things have to be taken into account. So really what I'm trying to say is it's bloody difficult to actually say which of these two is the best value for money upgrade, despite the price delta being so different. And what it really boils down to is personal. Your personal situation, how you see, the best way to spend your money, because not everybody will be able to spend £4,000+ in one go to buy a Diva 2SP, where maybe they would be able to spend £1,500 now, a couple of years, maybe another £1,500 for the power supply upgrade, and you're still going to have a great sounding setup. So my takeaway from all of this kind of testing and experience is that both of these products are easily recommendable, but obviously in their own rights, right? They're obviously intended for different people for different reasons. But what you notice really quickly with vinyl playback is that everything matters, and things are interacting. So you improve one thing today, that helps you appreciate the benefits of maybe what you improved or upgraded last time. Everything's massively interlinked, and that definitely includes the importance of the tone arm. And the tone arm is something that I'm really interested in to learn more about, and I've actually got some video projects and things planned to find out more about tone arms, why they're important, what they do, what could be the differences between different tone arms, and why maybe there are important things to pay attention to. So if you'd like to, there's going to be some factory visits in there as well. So if you'd like to see all of this, because it's going to be really, really useful and interesting, make sure you've subscribed to the channel, of course. And I just want to finish by saying that 1 year in of vinyl playback, I'm just starting to get there. I'm just starting to get some really good sound, which means I am really starting to enjoy it. And I've even bought some furniture. It's just off there to the camera. I've bought some furniture so I can store my vinyl and grow my vinyl collection. And if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, would you rearrange your whole listening room to make space for storage for records, I would have laughed you out of the door. And the only reason I've done that is because when you get your turntable set up right, yes, it's finicky, and yes, it's not perfect. Yes, crackles and all this sort of stuff going on with the music. But when you get a nice turntable set up well, it can be an amazing way, a really enjoyable, amazing way to listen to music. There's so many unique things about it, just the way you interact with it, the buying of the records, the physical aspect of it, right? The hands-on aspect of it, all that is all part of the enjoyment. But even the listening experience can be really amazing. It can be an amazing way to listen to music. So I'm pumped, really pumped for continuing this journey, and I hope I'm really enjoying it, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you had, hit the thumbs up button. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you soon.